Welcome to The One Inside, an internal family systems podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Sollenberger. On today's podcast, I speak with Laura Schmidt on befriending brain injured and pandemic parts. Hey everyone. I am so excited to chat with Laura Schmidt today. She bravely shares her story of a life-changing event with openness and vulnerability. Her story is heartbreaking and it's inspiring. It is a story of acceptance and hope, of yielding, and the need for patience. The parallels between the lessons that she learned and many of our own struggles during the pandemic are many. Put your pens down on this one and just notice your parts. Notice your parts reacting to her story. Notice the parts reacting as you're moved and as you're challenged and inspired. One of my huge takeaways, and the reason why Laura and I decided to title this, was the idea of befriending those parts that are feeling lost, and befriending the pain, and befriending the fear, and befriending all of those things that are coming up for you, whether it's dealing with loss because of COVID, loss of identity, loss of job. There's so much stuff coming up. Fear. There's so many fears right now, especially with the political stuff. I didn't even mention that, but the pandemic and the political stuff, there's so many fears. And so I just want you to listen to this episode and just be with whoever comes up, reminding them that you're there, that you're calm, that you're an adult, and that you're safe, and maybe asking, how do I not fight this? How do I friend this fear? How do I begin to befriend the parts that are so anxious and scared and worried? Laura is a certified IFS therapist for over 10 years. She's a PESHE seminar speaker, an approved consultant for IFS certification, and an AAMFT supervisor. She loves teaching IFS and leading workshops. She does consultation and process groups. So if you're interested in any of those things, especially consultation and process groups, definitely reach out to her. She is committed to supporting healers doing their own work. And I have to say, just personally, working with Laura during this process has been so encouraging to me. If you want to know more about her, I put all of the links up on the show notes. So on the show notes is her website, the Caring Bridge website, her email, the Facebook page for her Instagram, all of that stuff. One of the things I want you to know before we go is she would really, really love to hear from you after listening to the episode. She would love to hear about what parts of you resonated with her story, and just to share with her the parts of you that came up as you heard this episode. So please do that. That would be such a gift. Okay, I hope everyone is well. Obviously, holler at me at the One Inside Facebook page and at IFS Tammy. I would love to hear from you. Enjoy this episode. So where are you in the world?
Yeah, so I am in, we say the upper left USA. I'm in Eastern Washington, that's Spokane, Washington. And I think this may be the last warmish week. It's just, fall's just arriving. So the trees are just starting to change. I'm looking out at an oak tree that my husband and I planted a couple years ago. And it's just a really lovely tree-lined street with sycamores and maples. And there are two ponderosa pine trees in our yard that are perfectly spaced for a hammock. And when the hammock comes out, sort of the neighborhood knows it's summer. And then when the hammock, we're just ready to take it down, then that usually means it's fall. So that's our sign.
Yeah. What are your winters like?
Well, we have 5 downhill ski areas within an hour or two from Spokane. We definitely get snow in Spokane. I wish I had the number. I love numbers, and I wish I could tell you that we used to live in Syracuse, New York, and I knew what kind of snow we got there. We get less snow than Syracuse, but we definitely get snow here in town. But if you want snow, you just drive up into the mountains. So
Wow, that's nice though. Well, and
Hmm.
it's nice because you have that option, but snow doesn't like wreck your life. Like in New Hampshire, the winter changes our way of life. And I think the thing that's happening for a lot of people right now is this, or maybe I'll just speak for myself.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll speak for myself. So when COVID happened in March, our weather was okay. Like it could still snow March, April around here, but COVID happened and we were, it was okay weather-wise, and so we were able to do trails, and my son and I would go for walks and we could be outside, and so we've been able
Yeah.
to be outside. And
Yeah.
so there is this like feeling, like a part of me that's like, what is it going to happen? What's going to happen in the winter when I
I
can't,
know.
like my book club can't meet because we're meeting outside right now. And there's a little bit of this anticipation because our leaves are turning. It almost feels like we're past peak, which is weird because it's pretty early, but
Hmm.
we're like almost at peak. We're at peak probably
Already.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
So, once we're past peak with the fall colors, it's just downhill from there
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
May. You've done a lot of traveling in your life.
In my life, yes, I actually have.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't surprised, but I was like reading your bio, and I was like, wow, you've had amazing adventures.
It's funny. Yes, I'm thinking even of adventures before I got married, and Eric and I have been married 25 years this year, and that's a big part of our relationship is
Is adventuring.
our adventures. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think our love for the outdoors, and they're usually creative. Like, if we do a bike tour, it's self-supported. It's very we don't usually pick the easier road for our trips. In fact, actually, I'll just share this for our 25th anniversary. I'm like, could we do like a resort thing maybe for the first time in my life? Like I just want someone to bring me a beverage. Do you know what I mean?
Wait a
I
minute,
don't
the
have
first
to.
time of your life, you've never been to like an all-inclusive resort where you're like, no,
So we have, I will say, because Eric's going to be like, wait, I've taken care of you. Yeah. um, but
no
all
one has
inclusive
ever
resort. No,
bought
I
me
mean
a drink.
we've stayed at nice places off season, like for a couple, like a day or two. But I mean, in terms of buy the package, we don't kind of do the package deal because
Yeah.
our little motto is we got our own thing going on. So, and that's, I mean, we're choosing these kind of trips, but they're
Yeah.
often, our joke is, when are we going to get back home to our cushy chair? So,
Now, does
but
he plan them, or do you plan, or do you guys plan it together? Is that part of the fun, is you plan these things together?
that's a great question. Well, so it's actually earlier before the life-changing event, which we'll talk about.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say it was a little more complimentary. I mean, he would do the kind of the micro planning. I mean, for example, like a backpacking trip, he loves studying all the topographical maps. And I mean, he'll do Google Earth. I mean, he's checking out boulder fields and weather and trip reports and stuff that just makes my head spin. Those, I would say, the extreme outdoor adventures he'll plan. I trust him more than I trust me. So, but I'm doing stuff on this end, to help us get out and find cat care and, I mean, it feels like a team effort, but
Yeah.
when
I
we've
love that.
traveled, like overseas, in terms of who's managing, getting the tickets and a lot of the details, I think that kind of thing we share pretty well, but I used to take more of that. And then that shifted a lot 10 years ago when I got hurt. So it's been kind of navigating, things have shifted, but now we're getting a little bit more back to where we used to be, which is nice. Like Eric said, I would love if you could take care of this. And now I'm more able to, but yeah, there were, I mean, about a decade where, and I'm lucky, I'm so grateful, but Tammy, there are trips where literally he said, Laura, just pack your toiletries and your clothes and get in the car. And I'm going to get choked up. And basically it was an effort for me just to sit in the car to get to,
Yeah.
we would do these sea kayaking trips, still do, in the Puget Sound. So that's the west side of Washington State. And he figured out, okay, where can we put the kayaks in. What's the least distance to the island that we can hang out on for a week? So I just had to paddle like 30 minutes in calm water. And then we'd set up camp looking out west towards Hawaii, basically, for a week. And I could just rest and recover. But I was in nature, and that was so healing. And I'm just, that's a gift,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm feeling right now is that I'm feeling a couple things. One is that he loves you so much and knows you so much and was able to say, even though it would be easier, and putting that in quotes, for us to go to an all-inclusive or whatever, or stay at home and do nothing, what I know you need for your soul is to do this thing. And I know physically and mentally it's going to be really challenging, but a little bit of effort, honey, and then we'll get there. And he just took care of you.
Even if, you named it. And that's when I think about this recovery journey from an injury that we're going to be talking about. I had a session with my therapist yesterday, and at the end it was, is there anything else? And I'm just like, this interview is a victory for me. I've told you that. And this is the first time I've publicly talked about my accident and the recovery. And I'm like, Laura, whose idea was that? I think I'm clarifying. So people who know me, I called her my patron saint. Like, Wonder Woman has been my patron saint for the last decade. And just in the last week or so, I'm thinking that maybe she's more of my muse. Like, I think she's the one that wrote you and said, hey, I'll be your guest if this would be an interesting story. And then when my rational brain stops and thinks about it, it's like, what did you just do? Like, are you crazy? So, and I'm juggling that, actually. I mean, it's getting better, but I'm aware, that's still, I've come a long way, but obviously it's still raw. And I'm thinking I really want to start with a podcast, but I'm passionate about this model. I love this community. And I know this community has been a huge source of my support. And I think that's where I was going, of just this gratitude, just heaps of gratitude for my people, like the community that has not given up on me, not just IFS, but, thinking about my husband and friends. And, I think about this. I don't know how people dealt with chronic illness and injury and hardship before the internet. And I know that sounds nuts, but when all I could do was look at I didn't even have, did I have a smartphone when I got, I don't know, but, all I could read was like 2 sentences of text because the screen was overwhelming, but I could hear a voicemail. I'm just so aware, like, we can't do this thing called life alone. That's just how it is. And so I have such a heart for people who are single and isolated, and the shut-ins and the prisoners and, solitary confinement. I'm like, you're killing the human spirit, and so anyway, that's a whole nother, realize we're going down that trail, but just how important. And I think that's a theme for me in my life. It's about connection.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm passionate about connecting with people and helping people connect with one another. And I see how that's informing my career shifting a little bit. And I'm seeing why and how. But I think, being absolutely rendered powerless with this injury of, you can't do this alone. You just can't, not emotionally, not practically, not spiritually. It's kind of humbling. I don't even know what to do with that, but I do think there's a part of, I want to tell my story more to encourage people to, watch out for each other, and just ways that we can connect with each other. And it's even in small ways. I think about, I didn't know how to care for a chronically ill friend or love them really before I was that person, but even just the simple thing of not expecting any response, but hey, Tammy, I'm thinking about you today. You don't have to do anything. Just take it.
Yeah.
Just receive. And I think for me, I wasn't, it's still hard for me to receive, but I was forced, Laura, if you don't receive, you're not going to get better, or not that I'm going to die, but I will, my spirit will wither for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's really hard to receive cards or a gift and not, I have really hardworking managers that are awesome, but boy, we are just jumping in, aren't we? Oh my gosh. Hi, everybody. It's been, 15 minutes? Oh my goodness. Anyway.
You're doing amazing, and I just feel like I could just keep listening to you talk. But let me direct you for a second, because everyone that's probably listening is probably like me when I first met you, was like, well, what happened? Yeah. So how about we, if it feels okay,
Yeah.
and we can go as slow as we want, there's no rush. How about we talk about what happened?
Okay. So I need to back up so I got hurt in June of 2010, and I was biking. So I'll answer that question. But some context informs sort of the severity of the injury. So in my 30s, I'm just going to do this by my age. In my 30s, I unexpectedly, but I started bike racing. We were living in Syracuse, New York. I know I just jumped into that. I mean, we were biking. There was a really active local cycling club. One of the women there was going to a bike clinic for kind of introducing women to racing. And I mean, I don't know if I'd say a competitive athlete, but I ran and I rode crew in college as a club sport. But I mean, I was a decent runner, but not, I'm not going to get a college scholarship running. But anyway, and at a point where I thought, okay, my competitive days are totally over. I'm washed up. Like I thought I was
in your 30s. You are washed up for stuff like that. Yeah.
But anyway, I went to this race clinic with a couple girlfriends, and I was like, wow, I am actually a pretty competitive person. So, and my husband was working out of town in the summers. He was leading mountaineering courses in Alaska. So I was on my own, and I'm like, we had actually bike toured together for that. He got me into bike touring. So I was used to being on my bike. We bike toured in the Alps, and our first date was a self-supported bicycle tour through British Columbia and across Washington State. I mean, that
was your first date?
It was our first date, but we say it wouldn't have been 8 weeks if we hadn't been getting along so well.
Wait, your first date was 8 weeks?
Okay, so we met in college, and then
you didn't just go to the Red Lobster?
We had I'm trying to think if we'd spent a little bit of time one-on-one. We had written letters actually for a year.
Aww.
I know. Who does that anymore?
I know.
But then he invited me. He's like, I want to bike to Alaska. Do you want to join me? I'm like, I mean, this is, after college, figuring out your way. And I was like, that sounds fun. And I knew I couldn't do that alone. I'm not a bike mechanic. I mean, I can do the basics, but I was like, wow, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. We didn't bike to Alaska, but we biked through British Columbia. And, but that also showed us we're pretty compatible. And that's, the adventures that set the stage, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry, you're asking about,
that's okay.
Let me jump ahead. So I got into bike touring, and then I thought, well, I'm comfortable biking. I love biking. I'll start, I'll enter this local race with my girlfriends. And so I started racing. So that was the summer of 2000. And the first, there's a big stage race. So that's a multi-day race that actually were my favorites because they're all different kinds of races. It might be a sprint for 30 minutes or a road race through the mountains of Western Massachusetts for 4 hours, But I ended up the reason why I'm telling you about the bike racing is it ended up becoming a really big part of my life, because I found I had the body type and the everything came together, and I found I was much better a much better cyclist than I was a runner. And this first race that I went to with my friend, we were just like, we all piled in the car, and I was kind of doing everything wrong, and it turned out I ended up winning. I won my category in that first stage race in my first summer.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really have a sense of what I was winning. Like, anyway, there are funny stories to go with that, but that was kind of my focus. That was also I call it a symbiotic relationship. I was working at a rape crisis center as a victim advocate and family therapist. This is right out of grad school, which was, as you can imagine, an incredibly demanding, just a tough, 100% sexual trauma. My self-care with that job was I would go out into the hills of upstate New York and train and race hard. And it's a stressful endeavor, but that replenished me for the day job, sitting in a closet with very traumatized people.
Yeah.
But they helped each other. And that's actually, I realized, Tammy, that's been a theme in my life of, this balance of when we're attuning to others, we're just so present and really pouring our heart and soul into, I'm here with you and I want to help you. All of our caregivers, I call them caregivers because I'm giving, I'm not taking. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah.
That's the word that I use. But so I'm giving to you, and then how do I replenish? And for me, and I think since sixth grade and the first, family fun run that my dad threw us all in, I think that's really my moving meditation. That's a big part of my spiritual practice. I didn't get the idea of writing you to be a guest while I was on a bike ride, but there are a couple of things actually in the last 6 months. I'm like, Laura would have never thought of that, but yeah. I sort of unpack and unravel whatever process when I'm moving, running or skiing or biking. So anyway,
you're noticing this is a form of self-care, and its intensity was equal to the intensity of your day job. Like the intensity of the biking was equal to the intensity of the job during the day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which is interesting. It wasn't, it's not like my self-care was knitting or something very quiet. But I've realized, I'm a very physical, experiential person. And I've noticed, I also think, so we were all socked in, literally stuck in our homes for a solid 8 days because of smoke a couple weeks ago. And I'm used to being stuck at home with, recovering from this injury. But what I'm not used to is no fresh air. And I think that's kind of my crack. That's I say I'm a fresh air addict, and I thought, I am not submarine material. I realized that after this week. I'm like, I am, and I always have to have a window open, and but that's life-giving to me. So, but yeah, it's the moving and the fresh air that is what replenishes my spirit. So
you're in New York, and this is your life, and all is well. And so then what happens?
Yeah. So, and actually the reason why I brought up the bike racing was, and this is not uncommon, anybody who's raced knows this, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to navigate when you're riding, 20, 40, 50 miles an hour, inches away from other bikes. And the race that you're in is determined on your experience, and they do that for safety. But as you can imagine, the entry level races, it's like a crash fest because everybody's learning how to ride their bike safely. So a lot of crashes early on, usually in bike racing. And there are also crashes at the, professional level. You see this if, you're ever watching a bike race. The first 2 years, I probably cracked at least 4 helmets. So what that means, put it together, So I fell hard enough to crack a helmet, um, which at the time, so this is in 2000, 2001 to early 2000s, and we're in a very different place right now talking about brain injury and concussions. And so I crashed like everybody crashes, but it's interesting. I didn't have symptoms in my bike racing career. I never had any brain injury symptoms. However, as most of us know now, brain trauma is cumulative, and one adds to another and another and another. So I actually stopped racing at the professional. I ended up, I just ascended through the ranks, and I was on the World Cup circuit with Olympians and world champions, and it was amazing. I mean, up Mont Saint Royal in Montreal, and I mean, I have to. If anybody's listening from Philadelphia, up the Manayunk Wall, that was like the biggest race of the year. I mean, it was such a rush. So anyway, but looking back on that, there was a cost to that. Had I known what this was going to cost me, would I have done it? I actually can't answer that question. But I do know, had I known the risk to my brain in bike racing, I don't know if I could have. I definitely know I wouldn't have been as fearless. I mean, I was a fearless descent, and you have to be if you want to win, so, yeah. But it cost me. So 5 years after I stopped professionally racing, I've been learning how to snowboard, which I had a helmet, but yeah, because that's what you do when you're 38.
Yeah. Something in the winter, but you probably biked in the winter too, right? Did you have one of those?
Yeah, I mean, I bike year round. I didn't have to train in terrible weather, which was nice. That was a treat. Okay. But I mentioned snowboarding only because even with a helmet, I definitely took some hits. Like it's shaken brain. I mean, shaken baby syndrome. I'm like, why don't we call it shaken brain? That's what's happening. Is the brain inside may not crack a skull, but that brain's being shaken. So anyway, in 2010, I mean, I hadn't been racing for 5 years, but my husband and I were just on I call it a la-di-da ride. It was an early season mountain bike ride on an easy, like a forest road. Nothing technical at all, but sometimes on the easier, when you're relaxed, you're going slowly, or I have nothing to worry about. That's often when crashes happen. And it was an early season, so the trail was wet. There were a lot of wet roots, and my front wheel hit a wet root that wasn't perpendicular to my tire. So it just took the tire out, and it was a descent. I was going about 20 miles an hour, and I landed directly on my cheekbone, and I was knocked out. And everyone asked, were you wearing a helmet? Yes, I was wearing a helmet, but it didn't touch my helmet. I landed on my face. Wow. And I embarrassingly, I'm like, oh yeah, our facial, this is part of our skull. Our face is part of our skull and the whole, so, and interestingly, nothing broke. I have good Nordic bones, which sounds good, but if something had broken, like if my cheekbone had broken, that would have absorbed some of the impact.
Right, exactly.
So good, strong bones may not have helped me. So basically all the impact went, so brain gets hit, front right cheekbone, and then hits against the back left side of my skull.
There's parts of me, there's like girlfriend parts that have a zillion questions. But I think what I want to do is say, okay, tell me about the impact of that emotionally and physically, and for how long?
Okay. It's a good question. And you got right to the heart of it. A long time. I would say 8 years. The symptoms, it was a weird accident, not weird, but every brain injury is different. But they check
level of consciousness, and I wasn't meeting. You meet five criteria, and Eric will tell. I wasn't meeting them. I couldn't. I kept asking over and over what happened. I couldn't remember my phone number. I couldn't remember what days I worked. I mean, it was clear I got knocked out, but he thought maybe, you know how boxers get knocked out, you know, this uppercut, because it was a facial injury. I think we thought, well, maybe it's just, this is mild. But time showed, I think the previous head hits had an impact on this. You know, I have a friend who was in the ICU. She was hit by a bus and her skull was shattered and, you know, nearly died. I mean, that's a traumatic brain injury. There's a fracture and blood. And, you know, I had none of that. There was nothing they could do to help me. But they said, Laura, your snow globe was shaken and you need to go home and rest. That was the metaphor. And it was a perfect metaphor, actually, because all these parts of my brain are just flying around. And that, you know, that was I would say the most challenging part of this. There is no timeline. You know, they say, oh, in 30 days or 60 days or 3 months or, you know, and I was compromised. I mean, I would say this injury affected every moment of every day for 8 years, you know? So it was just a matter of how do I mean, this is so IFS, and I'm still making connections, but how do I not fight this? I have to befriend this state, you know, befriend the injured parts. That's been my work, because if I fight them, I'm not going to get better, or it's not going to help. This forced me to a level of patience and acceptance and like yielding that I never, ever could have imagined. I mean, in terms of my helplessness, you know, so my symptoms were specifically around filtering. I mean, our brain actually, I thought about this, of course, too late. I'm like, wait, what are the numbers of, you know, but the percentage that our brain's responsible for filtering, it's like 99% of what our brain does filters. So we're only getting, I think it's, you know, out of the millions of bits of information our brain filters in a second, we're only aware of, seriously, maybe 30 bits out of millions. Wow. And we have no sense of that until there's a brain injury. And so my symptoms were, and, you know, people get hurt and everyone's like, oh, I'm glad you're okay. And I'm thinking, let's check back in 2 weeks, because my symptoms got the worst 2 weeks after I got hurt.
Wow.
And that's when I'm like, wow, I can't go outside. I had an extreme, it's photophobia. I just call it a light sensitivity. But for 4 months, I had to live, thank God, our basement's finished and it's cozy, but I had to live in a basement sealed off from light for 4 solid months. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't, there was this little window between dawn and dusk before all the neighborhood lights come on. That was my sweet spot. Wow. So we called it the Bat Cave. That's where I lived. And it was really a very, a very, very slow process of healing. And Tammy, I'm just going to mention, we'll say it again at the end, and I'm still blown away that my managers could actually, I wrote a blog for 3 years, and it's even now, I'm like, could I write that now? I mean, it's actually pretty coherent, but it's on caringbridge.org, and it's the first 3 years of my injury. You know, I mean, it's not every week, but it updates. And that was really to my community who was supporting and worrying and praying for me and checking in on me. I'm in awe that I could do that. But for people who want more details, that really walks through, at least at the beginning, what was happening for me. And I just want to mention that. So
yeah, that's great. And so you're in the Bat Cave, but you have amazing managers, which obviously you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten to where you were. You know, you were teaching for PESI, right? Like you were like a big deal. Not that you aren't a big deal now, but you're like, you have all of these amazing like plates spinning.
And it's interesting how many, you know, when
I don't like to categorize myself, but let's just say when a type A kind of person is injured. I have a friend who she does IFS informed athletic coaching, injury recovery, and athletes. I mean, and I fit into both categories. I'm a competitive athlete. I'm like, I dream big and I go for it. So when you're rendered useless, I think this is hard for anybody, regardless of your dreams. But and that's when I give introductions to IFS, and this was a very conscious decision, but I decided I'm going to use my internal system as the application for this model. So of the protectors and the protected, and I tell them about my managers, and when I got hurt, and it's crazy, but even when I talked, I literally put an X through my managers. When I got hurt, they were totally shut down. My managers could do nothing. Wow. So imagine what happens to a system when your managers are rendered useless. I mean, my managers were injured. They couldn't be a good friend. I lost my identity as a therapist. I eventually had to take a medical leave because I had nothing to give clients. And I couldn't even write a thank you note. I couldn't even heat up a cup of water. I mean, I was as helpless as a baby, and I felt like I was as old as 100-year-old. And that's, I know what it's like to be old. So it was just a very surreal existence of, and like accepting that, but not giving into it, like holding out hope, like I'm going to get better. I think I'm going to get better, but maybe I won't get better, or in what ways will I or not? And it's still, it's been 10 years and there's still so much. I'm just at the point of, I want to write about it. It just affected every facet of my existence.
Well, and so I'm guessing that that's part of the parts work, is loving on the parts of you that are injured and the parts of you that can't heat up a cup of water, and then being with the parts of you that are feeling hopeless and feeling like you want to give up and feeling like how far you've fallen, even though you had but that feeling way.
It was, yes, I feel like it was I actually have this metaphor of, because our basement, I mean, it's a daylight basement, but I was resting, I'm underground, and I felt like I'm a bulb, a bulb, and placed in the ground in the fall, and then eventually comes out with color and life, but I'm just resting in the earth, really.
Wow. Okay. And so then if I'm thinking that I'm a bulb, then that helps me have more acceptance and more patience and more slow. And I'm going to have to be a bulb because I can't shoot out of the earth too fast. So I need to be the bulb.
And to embrace feels a little strong. Like, could I embrace it? But actually it was all about learning how to be and not... and really working. And this was the work with IFS. And I, a couple years in, actually, I have a very dear aunt who introduced me to mindful self-compassion with, Kristen Neff and Chris Germer. And that offered me, it added some extra dimensions to my IFS practice, but because my critics were just beating, pardon me, they were just beating the shit out of me. They were leveling me, because I couldn't be a good, quote, good wife, good therapist, good friend, nothing. My identity was just torn away. And I think that's when people are unemployed or injured, I have so much more compassion especially in our culture, when we're so defined by, I experienced this of when I finally could be social, because that took years to be able to go to a social event. But, when people ask you what you do, that's a dangerous question.
Yeah.
You know, what if you can't do, what if what you do is, you know what, I survive, or, you know, I'm trying to get well, or, you know, why not? Who are you? Or something.
Yeah, right. I think about people that battle mental illness, right? Like people in our offices that are like, what I did today was I didn't die, or I didn't kill myself, or I took a shower and I
Or
made myself a
I
meal.
put clothes on, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't die. Exactly. You know, and for me, it's like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm trying to like survive. I mean, it was about survival. And, you know, I want to be careful of, I mean, yeah, I'm just aware of, okay, my survival, there's so much privilege in my survival. I have safety, I have warmth, I have a husband who is paying the bills. I mean, my joke, well, I've had a joke. I'll just share this. It has to do with my managers when I can't do anything for myself. And I would say I am such a lug, which for me, a core belief is I don't want to be a burden. God forbid, or God forbid I need anything. I mean, I was a very independent person. And I would say, Eric, I'm such a lug. And you know what his response was? It's like, but you're my lug.
Aww. Did he love it though? Did he love it? Like, finally, you're going to let him help you and love on you. And
oh, you good therapist, you. You know, he would say, you know, and obviously being gentle about what I went through and what he went through, but he would say this may have been the best thing that ever happened to our marriage.
Wow.
Because the piece around, he finally got a chance to take care of me.
Yeah.
And I was forced to receive being taken care of.
Yeah.
Actually, which was huge for us. And that, you know, I don't want to say he blossomed or he thrived, but he loved having that opportunity, you know, and it's a little sad. I guess it took me, you know, to be so hurt for that to happen. I want to hope that we would have gotten there but I don't know but this added a dimension to our marriage that, yes, I don't think we wouldn't have experienced this, you know, Laura depending on Eric in these ways, or Laura needing Eric in these ways. And that's also made me so, I mean, just infinitely appreciative of, you know, I think you saw you know, we went on this backpacking trip that was pretty demanding, but I mean, I couldn't have picked that route. And, you know, the joke is if we go somewhere, you know, by the time I'm packed up, if I'm packed up, then I have to rest a day to drive. And then I have to, if it were just me, then I'd have to drive myself and rest before I could even start on the trip. I mean, everything would take twice as long. But now it's like, Laura, pack and you can sleep while he drives, and he's already picked the route. So yes. But yeah, that, and that's very astute. I think that's, was a huge part of it. Allowed space in the relationship for him, for his parts. He's a 2 on the Enneagram. He loves to help. And, you know, who does he marry? Somebody who's, you know, I got it. I mean, I'm used to, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. I mean, that's my life.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking of COVID and people losing their identities and being stuck at their house and losing their jobs, or even being paused. Like, I still have clients, so it's September. I still have clients that aren't working, right? They're still not working. And so, so we were talking about maybe making some parallels between your experience and what's happening right now with the pandemic.
Yeah. When COVID hit and we were, you know, the stay-at-home orders, well, I started feeling like a big sister to the world around. And I know I'm not alone. I think anybody who's been a shut-in or dealt with a chronic illness or injury, or just been encumbered and sort of, I can't do what I want to do. Like, I'm being told no, whether it's the government or it's a pandemic or it's my body or my mind. And I was just acutely aware of, there's a lot of energy, you know, when an able-bodied person, and I was in that boat, is told, no, you can't, or your body won't allow you, or it's not safe to, you know, leave your home. We as humans, we don't like being told no. We, especially as adults, well, I guess kids too, right? But I was just so aware of like, oh man. I think what hit me too was, well, some of it is when you get hurt, there's this bizarre relationship with time of, okay, in a week, I'll be seeing clients again, or, all right, the light sensitivity will be done. You start I mean, I equated it of how we measure time for infants, and we do it by the days, right? And then the weeks, and then the months. And then at some point, how old is your kid? Oh, he's 2.
Yeah.
But up until then, he's 22 months, or right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with the recovery, it was, okay, I've been, it's been 2 weeks or 10 weeks or, and I actually kept track by the days because every day was hard. And I'm bringing this up because I was just really aware, as with social media, I'm watching people like, oh my gosh, I've been home for 3 days, or, just the numbers. And I'm like, oh, people, if you're complaining about a week, I mean, there was a lot of compassion, but also concern. Like, the world doesn't have a sense of how hard this is going to be. If you are, griping about a week or 2 or 3, I equate this as a stage race. This is a marathon. This is not a quick fix, and as this is going on, I'm more aware of, it's this dance of, we can't fight it. How do we work with this? You know what I mean? I can't hate the pandemic, because that's just going to tear me up or put me at risk, but it's,
yes.
How can I work with this? It's about collaboration, and that's what it is with our own internal system. We need to work with, not against. So anyway, I think for me, it was just having, and kind of coming out the other side of, I have just lived with chronic limitations for me, it felt like 8 years. And then I finally was like, okay, can go to a meeting and attend a training, without being so compromised. But yeah, within me, I was feeling actually heartbreak for myself, because I'm like, I just got my life back. Are you kidding me? I got to go essentially back to the basement, do everything on Zoom. Like, I was in a bad place for a couple months. I'm like, please, I finally can go out to eat and meet friends. And now I can't go out because of a pandemic. Like, what?
Right.
Right. So, but I think, it just, my heart just broke because I could feel this energy of, the world resisting this and being angry and upset and fear of this unpredictability. And what does this mean? And then the financial stress. And, I think also the social isolation, I know firsthand. I mean, I need a lot of time alone anyway. I consider myself a social, or I'm kind of an outgoing, I'm a not shy introvert, basically. So even, we all need human contact. And so it was just painful, because I'm thinking, I know how to do this. I'm like a pro at this by now, and it's awful. It's like really, really hard. And so, and I'll just say, Tam, I think this is what prompted me. This was my muse, or this was on the bike ride of, Laura, why don't you start a weekly, this pause for calm and connection? I was not prepared. I'm not a meditation expert, but I'm like, you know what? This model helped me in my time of need. These meditations helped me when I was really in a dark place. And I thought, anyway, so it was the same part that wrote you. I'm like, hey, let's offer this live, which is also, I mean, I'm not technical anyway. It's been a learning curve, as a lot of us have been in that boat. Like, I don't, fortunately I had been doing Zoom for years, because that was I couldn't attend trainings for the most part. So, but yeah, I felt like I know what this is like. And I want to give something to my community around helping them connect, and then just find some calm and comfort within, because this is so hard. This is so hard.
So would you say that friending sort of is like a couple of takeaways about how to
Mhm.
cope with the pandemic. Friending the parts of you that are upset, angry, terrified, in a tizzy. When's it going to be over? It needs to be over. Sort of
Yeah.
really listening into those parts and friending those parts. And is there other sort of some acceptance of this is the lifestyle it is right. This is my
Yeah.
lifestyle right
Yeah.
now, and
So I think I'll back up a step. I would say the first is naming, what am I holding? I mean, but that also takes, I've got to slow down. That's been my word, is pause. It's
yeah,
that's been a theme, and I had an 8-year pause, but if we don't slow down, we don't know what's there, and so
yeah,
that's the encouragement in whatever form that is. It may not be sitting, and for me, I don't get my best ideas sitting.
right, right,
But I think it's that slowing down, the being curious of
yeah,
what's happening right now. What is this? What am I? Wow, I'm really stirred up. What is, that focusing inside, and for those who don't know IFS that are listening to this, just what's happening in my body right now, like just to be curious of what is this response, and to be with it and to listen to it. I
yeah,
think it's that validation of, I'm really scared, or I'm really lonely, or and then it's the steps of, okay, what does that response need from me? How do I take care of it? I'm really lonely. Okay, let's be curious in a loving way and get to know the loneliness of, how can I take care of you? What does that look like? And I think for me, Tammy, that was a kick. That was a not a turning point, because it was very gradual, but when I was able to be with my critics, so this is a little different, but when I was being so beat up for not being able to offer anything to anybody, the validating how hard this was, and that's what softened my critics, was to just say, this is really hard, Laura, this is really hard, and I'm sorry, and this is a moment of suffering, and life is suffering. This is part of it. We can't will our way out of it. We can't skip that step of suffering in life. It just doesn't work that way, and so, but that, and I think for me, and I think for others, even in this pandemic, nobody's living in your particular situation through this crisis, and so, as much as, and this is, I think we teach this in therapy, as much as I want my husband to validate that specific need, right? But he doesn't get it. And how could he get it? This is my experience. And when I finally, it's not like I do this all the time, but when I finally got that, of, I know, and this is a question, I think IFS uses it, but I pulled it from Mindful Self-Compassion. What does this part need to hear in this moment? Or what do I need to hear in this moment? I know exactly what I need to hear. I can't get that from Eric or you or my therapist. But if I can slow down and ask that question, that's like, it's total balm to my soul. Like, this is hard, or I'm really tired. Just, it's really simple. It really is simple. But I think if we can do that for ourselves, it's very empowering. I'm like, I don't have to wait for my therapy appointment to get validated. I got it. I got it right. It's right here. The answers lie within me. So
yeah, I love that. When you were talking, I was thinking about how, at the beginning of this, everyone was joking about how we were all gaining weight or drinking too much or shopping too much. And I thought, right, that's all those firefighters that are not pausing. They're not slowing down. They're not saying, this is really hard. And the critics, I think, sort of the other joke was that the critics up around like, oh, I'm going to use this time to learn a language. I'm going to use this time and like, oh, wow, here's an opportunity to like have more time. I'm putting all this in quotes because I don't know who was saying this,
I
but
know.
sort of there was this feeling of there's this opportunity to have more time, and what are we going to do with this opportunity? And the critics, my critics were like, you know, I have to take advantage of this time, but I'm exhausted and I'm
Yeah.
remote learning and or remote teaching and,
Yeah.
you know, still seeing 8+ clients a day on Zoom. So, but yet this part of me was telling me that I am not supposed to be shoving cookies in my face and I'm supposed to learn a language. Like, okay.
Well, it's kind of like don't try to lose weight and stop smoking at the same time, and,
Yeah.
this is another theme that um, I grabbed onto this early, but it's just being gentle with ourselves. I mean, we're so, at least I would say American, white European, I would love to know other cultures, Latin cultures that are you guys a little less self-critical than we are, but just yeah, just being gentle. And this is all I can do. I think about parents that are just the pressure that they were putting on themselves, if my kid's got to succeed or, just in so many ways, it's like, what? Well, I'll give you an example with this pause for calm. I think what inspired me, well, I was seeing, people are popping up here and they're just doing their best, like, I'm going to play my violin, even though, I just want to share something with the world, and so I had this, my little line was, Laura, give it a go. The bar is low. And I'm like, so are people and actually, what it did? It actually helped I don't feel like a perfectionist, but I know when I do something, I want to do it well. But it calmed all of those managers of, so what? People are going to like criticize you for offering a free meditation. I mean, I just thought it just felt like the stakes are pretty low, and that allowed me to just do it imperfectly, which was actually very freeing. And I'm glad I went for it. But it took a pandemic to consider, all right, I'm ready. Well, I'm not ready, but.
So why don't you tell everybody what that is? Because we haven't told anybody what that is yet.
Yeah.
Tell everybody what pause for calm.
Pause for calm. Yeah. So I was doing it weekly, and then I had to kind of take care of myself. So it's the first Wednesday of the month, and it's, if you just keep in your mind noon Pacific time, it's you can go to my website. I'll just say it right now. It's Laura Schmidt, LMFT, licensed marriage family therapist, Laura Schmidt, LMFT.com. And at the bottom of each page, I've learned this now, it's called an opt-in. But it just says you'll just enter your email so that you'll get the Zoom link. I just mail out like 3 emails a month around this pause for calm, the Zoom link, and then some updates on the events I'm offering. And also I'm now including sort of resources like IFS resources that have come up in the last month. I usually include them in my mailing. So, but anyway, that's how you can get the information for it. And I lead a guided meditation. I start at 12:15 Pacific time, like a 10 or 15 minute guided meditation. I give you a couple minutes just for some writing reflection, and then I open it up to the group if anybody wants to share any nuggets or, it's a little bit of an opportunity for witnessing. So it's a 30-minute commitment once a month. But it's been a neat thing just to connect people actually from all over the world. So,
that's awesome.
And yeah, that's sort of my COVID blessing. So.
I love it. Okay. So if people want to get in touch with you, they can check out your website. And then also tell me about the caring link where you wrote your journey.
It's caringbridge.
Caringbridge.org.
You'll type in my name, Laura Schmidt, no space, and that would give you the kind of the updates, more specifics about the brain injury. Actually, Eric did one of kind of the specific scientific part of it. Yeah, you can see that. So
great if you want to hear more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else we want people to know or you want to say?
Well, I didn't get a chance to thank you for, I wanted to really just say thank you, Tammy, for hosting this podcast. I'm really new to the podcast community, partly because I couldn't listen
to radio for years. It was just more auditory input. So once I discovered it, I've been sort of catching up and learning about actually colleagues. Some of them I know well. I'm learning new things and new colleagues, and especially during this time where we can't be together and we didn't have the conference and our trainings are all online. It's just a wonderful gift to us and those, outside of our community. So I did want to just thank you so much for doing this, and that I got to share this time with you. It's really a treat. And just in terms of what I'm doing, I'm really focusing my energy, and I have so much excitement. My passion really is working with clinicians and healing professionals. So now my work has shifted solely online, which was a heartbreak at one point, but now I'm realizing it just opens up opportunities. So I'm running IFS consultation groups for healing professionals. You can find all this information on my website under offerings. I offer consultation groups. They can count towards certification for level 1 grads. I offer process groups for people who want to do more of their own work. I thought there was one other thing. Anyway, it's on my website, but I'm super excited about that I'm well enough to be able to do this. And I really, this model lends itself well to this, but I really believe we need to do the work we're asking our clients to do. The better we know our system, the more effective healers we will be, and the more we can sort of spread the light and make this world a more loving place. So thank you.
So I want to end saying happy birthday, because we're going to air this on your 50th birthday. And so I want to say happy birthday.
Thank you. It's a victory, really, and a big celebration. So yeah, you offered that, and I'm like, I couldn't have a 40th birthday celebration because I had just gotten hurt, and then I had hopes to have the real 50th, and that's not going to happen. But I'm used to waiting. I can wait. It's a little sad, but this actually feels like a gift I never would have imagined, just to be well enough to do this with you. And I hope it helps people. And thank you for your patience and graciousness. You've been, I'm just grateful. So thank you.
Thanks for hanging out today. If you like this episode, make sure you subscribe. And if you really like this episode, share it with a friend and leave a review. You can follow me on Instagram at IFSTammy and join our community on Facebook at the One Inside Podcast. Talk to you next time. Today's episode was sponsored by Brighter Vision. What's the point of having a beautiful website if it doesn't attract the clients you want to see? As the worldwide leaders of website design for therapists, Brighter Vision sees this issue happen way too often. A nice-looking website doesn't equate to a successful website. The truth is, your current website might even be turning off potential clients. That's where Brighter Vision comes in. Brighter Vision's team of website designers will create a website that is centered around attracting and retaining your ideal client so that you can have a nice-looking website as well as a successful one. Better yet, Brighter Vision is offering $100 off exclusively for listeners of the One Inside podcast. To take advantage of this offer, simply go to brightervision.com/inside. Again, that's brightervision.com/inside.